Welcome to Laguna Podcast, an attempt at illustrating the lives and stories from the Texas outdoors. Today I sit down with a generational guide who has seen the Texas coast change across 4 decades and a successful tournament angler for many of those years. This is my conversation with Jim West.
I don't know. We'll see.
All right, cool. So after a long time of trying and failed attempt last week, I finally got Jim West in the chair. And it's funny how we met. And I'll give a quick story before we start. It was over at the Houston Fishing Show. And I was at the Bauman Propeller shot, or Bauman Propeller, whatever the stand.
Bauman.
Yeah, Bauman. And I was talking to some people over at a different place, and Corey starts calling me, and he's like, get over here. And I'm like, just give me a minute, because I was talking about some important stuff. And he goes, no, come over here right now. I was like, okay. So I walked over to Corey, and you were there, right? But I still hadn't known why you were there, or why I was being told to go. And we were scrolling through some of the later pages in the book that I got from Shannon Tompkins, and in the book I had a picture of you. And to me, that was so cool to meet someone who was actually involved in it way back when with someone like Shannon. So that's why I was extremely excited to actually sit down and do
Shannon
this.
had took that picture of me on a fishing trip. And then also you had a picture of Tim Wolford, who's one of our hunting guides, was years ago. And Shannon had took that picture and hunted with us at Los Patos.
All right. So
pretty cool.
Yeah. No, to get this started the way I like to do all these, run me through some of your first memories in the outdoors and kind of your chronological progression as an outdoorsman. You've done a lot.
Well, my dad was a hunter and a fisherman, and that's all he wanted to do. He was raised by his uncle, who was a commercial fisherman on Caddo Lake and Lake of the Pines in East Texas back in the 40s and 50s. So, and he had a pretty tough life. But after that's all he wanted to do, he went to South Louisiana working. Actually had a scholarship to play baseball, but he couldn't make any money playing baseball. So he went to work, but then he came back, and but he was a hunter, and he really wanted to hunt and fish, and he started guiding on the Bears Ranch back in the 60s, and then Sonny Bowman, and then there was a Jackson. I think they called him Crack Corn Jackson, and he was guiding duck hunts, but he was also working at Diamond Shamrock, and so he was working in a lab. So he worked straight evenings, and so he could get up early and hunt for Joe Legault on the Bears Ranch. And it was tough because they had him working a lot and during hunting season. And then fishing, I remember going over to Jack Castle, and he bought a 19 Mako. That was his first boat to guide out of, and that was in, I believe, 72 or 1973. And he started guiding part-time, fishing out on the bay, and we had fished quite a bit, and I had a tri-hull boat, but it was small. It was like a 18 or 19, I don't remember. But anyway, he started guiding fishing trips and became quite popular. And really built his business on with Bob Brister and Joe Doggett, who were writers out of the Chronicle, and because he had a deal that there weren't that many guides back then, very few. I think Marshall Deal, Wendy Marshall were about, and I probably missed somebody, back in the 70s, there just wasn't any, very few. My dad was one of the first guides, and a lot of the guides here now got their start with my dad. So, included myself, so he gave me that opportunity is what he did. I learned a lot on my own. People say that, well, he taught you that. Well, he gave me the opportunity to do it because he sold his boat. He owned 2 or 3 boats, and he always wanted a larger boat in the late 70s. Late 70s and the 80s. But he ended up getting a boat free from Ranger Boats. It was a 24-footer. And he ended up selling that boat to Dave Quidon, who owned Pescador boat. So Dave guided for.
This episode is made possible by our friends over at Gordy & Sons Outfitters, located in Houston, Texas, and employing a team of experienced outdoorsmen specializing in fly fishing, hunting, and wing shooting. Gordy & Sons is sure to prepare you for success in the outdoors. Next time you find yourself prepping for a weekend getaway or a bucket list trip, be sure to give them a shout.
With us for a few years before he moved to Victoria and then started guiding in Port O'Connor. But my dad, he just quit fishing cold turkey, 1983. Just quit. He didn't want no more of it. But he had a lodge, built a lodge on duck hunting, goose hunting. And we had the largest duck hunting operation through the 80s and 90s. Mm-hmm. We kind of fluctuated between 60 and 70,000 acres back then. It's unbelievable. I hunted every day. We really had a good business, or he did. But I started fishing, I guess, in 78 when I was in high school, guiding. Mm-hmm. He got a new boat then, and he gave me that 19 Mako, and I guided out of that 19 Mako for a year, 2 years, I think. And boy, it was a wet boat. I remember that. But I was lucky to have it. It had a 135 Evinrude on it. And then I think he sold that. And then when I got out of high school in 81, I think that's when I had a Regal. He had a 22-foot Regal, and that's when he got that Ranger boat, I believe. And he gave me that Regal, and he sold the 19 Mako. Anyway, and then he sold his Ranger in 82 or 83, but he quit fishing. Yeah, he just didn't want to fish anymore.
And you had to take over.
I took over. Yep. Mm-hmm. I lived in Bolivar. I moved to Bolivar, and after I graduated out of high school, I guess in 81. Mm-hmm. So, but I already was going down there for a couple of years fishing.
Yeah. No, one of the things I wanted to ask was describe kind of those first 2 years when you were running the Mako 19. Still kind of like under your dad's whim or like maybe stuff like that?
Yeah, that was a summertime deal because I was in school, and it was all about catching fish. It really wasn't catching big fish or targeting big fish. You know, there was no tournaments going on either. So we were just going, I was taking customers. At first, we were charging $75 a day for a trip for two people. And I think it was $100 a day for three. And that was for a half-day charter. And full day was like $125 or $150. It was just nuts. You know, gas was, like I said, 75 cents a gallon too. So, you know, it just, and I didn't care. That's all I wanted to do was fish, hunt and fish. Mm-hmm. You know, and I did. That's all I did. That's all I wanted to do. All the way through the 90s, up until really, you know, and I started tournament fishing in the late 90s. CCA had some tournaments earlier than that, but I was pretty gung-ho. You know, I didn't take days off. I didn't start taking weekends off till probably 2005, maybe 2010. Yeah. So I fished every day that I could.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, like, one of the things I want to know is like describing how the fishery has changed over this, like in your eyes anyways, from those, like from that a lot of time.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Unbelievable. Now, you know, I fished the whole Gulf Coast when I fished tournaments. In the Redfish Cup, the Alberto Redfish Cup, when they started in 92, no, it'd be 02, I'm sorry. 02 or 03, whenever they started, it was all the way to Florida. And I really didn't fish that until then. So I was just fishing, and I was mainly guiding in the Galveston Bay area. So I didn't see a lot of what went on as I grew up other than what's right here in this area. So I did fish tournaments. I loved fishing those Troutmaster tournaments, and I ended up fishing up and down the Texas coast every bay system every year. Mickey had it. Mickey Eastman had it, and he ran it, and then he sold it to oh my gosh, my mind's blank. Robert Scheer, who owned American Rodsmith. And he ended up taking it and running it for another and I'm just guessing another 4 or 5 years or so. And then Alberto Redfish Cup, they came on. But I quit tournament fishing. I guess the last year was in 08. I kind of just felt like that I just didn't want to travel no more.
Gotcha.
So I was guiding. I had other stuff going on too. And, well, I know what it was. I had kids.
Yeah.
And, so, and actually, I went through a divorce and I took custody of my children. So I had my daughter and my son, and I raised them by myself.
You had your hands full.
Sure did.
One of the things I wanted to ask now that I was trying to piece together the years. So one of your first years guiding, like one of them, not the actual first year, was actually right around the 83 freeze.
No. My first guide.
No. I know, but I mean, like it was like 5-6 years, and then you had the 83 freeze. So you were still kind of like green, still kind of fresh. And I was curious as to maybe how you adapted when the freeze happened, when it killed off a lot of the species in the bay.
Yeah, the 83 freeze was incredible. No doubt. I mean, I'll never forget a conversation in 84 with Blaine Fryermood that I had. And we talked about it. And I asked Blaine, we're sitting on the north shoreline of East Bay. I left and I was on the south side, went over there, and I didn't know who it was him. And he was over another place called Coon Creek. It's on the refuge. And I'm over at the second set of cedars, and they're about, 600 yards apart. He just got back out of the boat again. And so I'm getting out of the boat. I just got over there. He'd been there that morning, but I waited another spot. So we pulled up, anchored up, and he's wading towards me. So this is like 45 minutes later. I'm wading towards him. And so we met, and we just like, he hollered at me, recognized me first. And we got to talking, man. We put our rods up, we shook our hands, each other, because we hadn't seen each other. Because he fishes more in Trinity and that upper Galveston area. And I'm fishing more, I fish more in East Bay and over towards Campbell's Bayou and that area. And then also out of the jetties. I used to, especially back then, I fished the jetties a lot. And I love the Bolivar Pocket. I love wading and fishing the Bolivar Pocket. So that's just areas of the bay system. He fishes more of the upper end and I fish more of the lower end, but I do fish the back end of East Bay. And that's my favorite place to fish for big fish, especially. But we talked about the freeze of 83. And it stuck in my mind. I'll never forget this conversation. And Blaine, I asked him, I said, well, how many fish over 30 inches that you had caught or 9 pounds or better? And he beat me by 1. I'll never forget that. And I sat there and I looked at that and I thought, and what went through my mind, I'm just a kid. I'm 21, 22 years old then, 23, whatever. And he had caught, I think 6 is what he said, and I caught 5. It was either that or he caught 5, because I was really trying to think back. Did I catch 4 over 9 that year, or did I catch 5? But I remember Blaine, he caught 1 more than I did, and it's just stuck in my mind like, what the heck? How did you do that? I never even seen him, but I know, he's in that upper end of Trinity Bay, and it's good. It's real good fishery. But adapting to that, because that was in the fall of 84 when we had that conversation. Yes. But I went to the jetties, and the jetties were loaded up with fish after the 83 freeze.
Really?
And I caught a ton of fish at then. But the problem fishing the rocks is you got to have good weather. You just, there's days that you may be booked, you go out, you're just not going to go to the rocks. It's blowing 20, you're not going to go out there. I'm not going to go out there, and but the Bolivar wells were good. We had a lot of Tiderunners coming in, and I fished Campbell's and Sand Island and Pelican and all that. I always have, and know it well, Once the summer's rolled around, and you're getting those Tiderunners. So the summertime patterns, really, you're fishing deeper water, and fishing was good. I survived, so to speak, in the year after the freeze.
Well, the reason I brought it up is because when I spoke with Shannon Tompkins about it, he mentioned a little bit about how like some of the trout guides, had lost their quarry, their objective, or what their prey, if you will, just for guiding. They ended up gravitating towards the inland tarpon that kind of would come into the middle of Galveston. So I was kind of curious as to like maybe some of the things that you heard, things that you saw, stuff that you experienced in regard to like inner Galveston Bay tarpon.
Up here, I was really one of the first, but the fishing was tough. Had Chris Phillips. We caught a 192 pounder. I had another one up to the boat. That fish, when we taped him, I think it was a 48-inch girth. He was 7'4", and the actual.
If you're enjoying this episode or any others and want to support the project, please check out my new book, Laguna, available at select stores or can be ordered directly at buylagunabook.myshopify.com.
The tape measurement, he explained to me it's supposed to have been 220-something pounds.
Really?
With that tape measure. So I think that's what it was.
Isn't that the record right now for Texas, 220?
Yeah, it's around something.
Yeah. Wow.
But our fishery, and that was something we didn't really know. I didn't know it. And we started, I put that fish out there. I mean, it just made headlines when we caught that fish.
Do you have pictures of that fish?
Somewhere. Yeah, I do.
I would love to see that picture.
I'll have to find it.
If you do, obviously.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I do. I have it with Chris. Chris and I are holding it up. We took it to Milt Seafood and weighed it. And I think, and so it's on their scale, weight on their scale. We killed the fish,
Yeah.
And I think it was 192, I think. I was thinking maybe 198, but I think it's 192. It stayed in the boat for 3 hours because I had one on light tackle on a 7,000 Ambassador with 20-pound test. I fought for 2 hours. I finally got it to the boat, and we missed it with a gaff. And I horsed the fish and broke me off.
Ooh.
It was a monster.
Yeah.
It was a monster. So anyway.
Wow. Who was one of the first, you said you were one of the first guys that were doing it. Like you said, it was a little tough to actually navigate and stuff like that. Who was one of the first guys that maybe started actually like figuring it out to I
think Plog, James Plog. He really did. And he was here guiding full time. I think he was, Mike Williams was another one. He fished
I've been trying to talk to Mike Williams for a while, actually.
Yeah. He didn't really fish in the bay so much. He was
out in the ocean, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Gulf.
Yeah, maybe.
Gulf, not ocean.
Okay, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, we're thousands of miles from the ocean.
That's fair.
Anyway, all right, there's a joke. That's good. But he fished down San Luis Pass.
Yep.
And I think that's more of a numbers game. You're catching, not there's big ones out there. I mean, they catch, 150 pounders, but those fish that came in the bay that couple of years, they were big. They were big. I had a hard time getting them in a boat. I could jump them, but I had a hard time hooking them. I think it was just because it's my learning, not knowing, and I'm not using circle hooks, I was throwing these big 70M mirror lures. It's a big one. And boy, they'd grab it. I bet I jumped 20-something fish, monsters, all over 150 pounds. And that year, but I didn't catch them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
had a couple jumps out of them, and they were, I had that one fish to the boat. I had another fish that was, I don't think it was as big to the boat, close to the boat, but it was kind of a learning deal. But it was inconsistent fishing. It was, go out and catch sharks, not even see a tarpon, and sometimes you see them, and you still couldn't get a bite. But you get a bite or two, jump a couple fish, so. But I had a lot of days there. We jumped them, but didn't catch them.
Yeah. And then, so how many years passed? Obviously not many, because then you had the freeze of 87, the freezes of 87, right? But how many years passed?
I think it was 89.
83 and 88. You're right. 83 and 89.
Yeah,
my bad. But so you had those freezes. In between those, how many years did it take for the fishery to kind of bounce back from the people, going to maybe target tarpon to, okay, here's more trout, here's et cetera?
Yeah, Galveston is a great fishery for numbers of good fish. You can just catch a bunch of good fish, and it's a big bay. It has always had lots of 5 to 7 pound fish in it.
Yeah.
We never really caught a lot of fish over 8 pounds. Not that we'd catch 2 or 3, 4 a year. A year.
Yeah.
But they catch 20 fish over 7 pounds in a year. But that's guiding every day. I mean, that's fishing every day. And then after the 83 season, the 82 season, I found those big fish in the back of the bay. And then I started targeting them. But it was always in the winter and the fall, and I did catch a 9-pounder on an open reef, and I had another one that was 8.5. It was on deep reef. But those days, you just don't. There's some places like Rollover Pass where there would be big fish and they would just eat, and they would be fat, you know, and the biggest trout ever caught in Galveston was in Rollover Pass.
Yeah.
So it was like a 12.6, I believe is what it was, or 12.8. I don't remember, when it was still open.
Yeah. One of the things that I was pretty impressed by as I've done this project, and as I've met, you know, people who've done it, who've actually been there in the earlier years and fished for these fish in that manner, was I didn't realize, or I didn't appreciate how crucial fishing the surf was for trout.
Yes.
I didn't know that at all. So then when Shannon shows me these pictures of him holding that giant stringer, he's like, that was all in the surf. We used to park the boat on the, like, basically essentially on the rock and then hop off and wait. And it was like, you'd be hitting these big fish. Like, it was one of those things that kind of blew my mind, because it was like, for me, I hear very few people actually doing it now because of all the pressure and stuff like that.
Well, the pressure's in the bay. The pressure is, the deal with the surf is you don't have many days to fish it. That's the deal there. And you're fishing summertime, basically, maybe late spring. There's not many days to fish it because the water, it's windy, so it's messed up, especially up here. You might have some places are close to the jetty, some little pockets that you can fish at times. But, and down south, down, you know,
Mansfield?
Yeah, out front, you know, north and south Padre Island, you know, you got miles of shoreline, and it will sustain more wind. It can blow more, and you'll still have, it can be choppy down there, and you can have green water.
That is true, because your beaches here are at a different angle than ours are.
But it's muddy.
Yeah.
It's not as sandy, and it's shallower a long way out where it's deeper down there. So that's a big deal.
Yeah. No, that was one of the things I learned to appreciate a lot. I was wondering if you were with Shannon on some of those trips over to the actual beach and stuff like that.
No, Shannon, he kind of did it himself.
Yeah. He'd say,
and I know he liked fishing Freeport or Surfside. Is it Surfside Jetty? I know he and Doug Pike, they would fish the Surfside Jetty a lot. So, but I talked to Shannon, and we fished some. We fished a little bit, kind of more back in the 80s probably, and maybe early 90s. And then it just kind of dwindled out. So just haven't fished. It's been a long time since I've even talked to Shannon.
Yeah. So. No. That's all. I was kind of curious on picking your brain about that story and like how you guys met and stuff like that. Because I think learning the interpersonal relationships of so many people in this space is something that I've grown very appreciative of.
Yeah, Joe Doggett was really the one that we really became friends with.
Really?
And Joe and we've hunted and fished together a bunch.
Huh. Okay. Well, tell me some of the Joe Doggett stories then.
I think one of the first ones was when I was just a kid, and Joe come out to the house and had dinner with us, and my mom cooked squirrels. Squirrels, yeah. And my dad, oh yeah, they're delicious.
Wow.
I shoot them I still hunt them. So, and I love them. They're great eating. Anyway, I'll never forget. She had a big old pot of gravy. She cooked them and smothered them in gravy. Okay. And my dad has these like crackers, nut crackers. Well, that's for the head. You take it and you hit the head, and he pops the brains out.
Okay.
And eats the brains. And Joe, he'd never even eat squirrels. And he's like, he squealed. I mean, he yelled. It was like a squeal. And he was like, oh my God, what the hell is this? It is the squirrel head looking at him. I mean, it wasn't looking at him. It floated up. But every one, it was like 5 or 6 of them. My dad, he picks the heads out. And Joe, he just like, he didn't know what to do. It's so funny. I mean, it was hilarious. But as far as hunting and fishing, I guess one of the first times probably the first time I ever took Joe, Joe was not, he did not like getting up early. He always liked to get up late. Can we go in the afternoon? And we go. And I remember meeting Joe. It was about 1 o'clock. And I think he had his buddy, I don't remember. Anyway, he had a guy with him. So wasn't even a limit. It was back before, it was years ago, and it was at Bolivar Wells, and I picked him up. I had some shrimps, and it was like I may have still been in high school, 1980, maybe 81. And anyway, I pulled up, and they're looking at this kid who's in school, 17 years old, you know, in the boat. And I think his buddy said something about it. And me being, is this our guy? You know, really? We're going to go with his kid? And I said, well, look at this. I opened the box, and I had like 9 trout in the box. I just made a little quick stop up there on the main body of wells, and it was just boom, boom, boom. So anyway, they hopped in a boat, and I think we caught 40 or 50 trout.
Oh, yeah.
You know, all Tiderunners, 1.5 to 3 pounds.
That's what you guys call smaller fish, Tiderunners?
Well, yeah, they do. It's just a nickname.
It's a neat name, though.
You know?
I kind of like it. Yeah, neat.
Yeah.
Tiderunner fish.
I don't know why they call it that. I mean, there's a fish that are coming in from the bay. I mean, from the Gulf. I'm sorry, from the Gulf.
Gotcha.
And it's a summertime fish. You catch them at the wells. They're generally not big. They're just solid, you know.
Gotcha. What were some of the people or some of the names that you would consider peers or like adversaries in those first, 10, 20 years of you guiding that maybe kind of, helped you get to where you are, or, people you would kind of compete with to kind of get better, et cetera, stuff like that?
Yeah, it was always a competition. I didn't look to where I had really any help.
Yeah.
I learned it.
Like friends in the space, stuff like that you wouldn't have met had you not been in the space.
Robert Tucker, he and...
you can get a little closer to the microphone so you can hear a little better.
I mentioned Robert Tucker, but it was a little later. He and Chuck, they started fishing a little bit with me. I started running him some trips. Quidon and I were guiding Dave Quidon pretty hard back then, and then Robert would come in. He was he fished on a tour, on a BASS tour. In fact, he won one, I think, in South Carolina, and he placed in some others. I guess I talked to Marshall Deal some, Wendy Marshall some, and then there was other guides that came on up, like I think James and Mickey Eastman and Blaine started guiding about that time, just a little later after I did. I started guiding a couple of years before they did, but it doesn't make it. It's just when, they see a way to fish and make a living doing it. So I was there. I was really kind of more so on my own, learning my own. My dad, I remember, he quit guiding full time. And I remember the last couple of years, he really didn't want to do it, fish. He wanted to duck hunt. And he wanted to run that lodge, and he wanted to play golf in the summertime. That's what he did. He sold his boat. He got out from under it, and he didn't even buy a boat. If he bought a boat, it was John Boats. He bought an airboat, for me to run during hunting season. I ended up running an airboat for 30 years and went through 3 different airboats, duck hunting. And I duck hunted every day in the 80s and 90s. Really up until about maybe 2000. Hurricane Ike hit in 2008, and I was running it then, but I didn't have a lodge. I was just doing day hunts down in the Highland area, but I was hunting a lot. But the refuge, they came on. They started buying the property up that we had, and around 2001 or 2000, and then we started losing chunks of property. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
When what year did you realize, you personally as an individual or anecdotally, that you were noticing that the fishery was becoming kind of congested and the pressure was actually increasing?
When Blaine and I talked about how tough the fishing was after the 83 freeze.
Really, that far back?
That far back. Oh, it was devastated. I'll tell you what, I was hunting when the freeze hit. In fact, I remember the day I was hunting. I can still remember my dog sliding across the ice and not breaking through to retrieve ducks. And I had a jacket, but I didn't have a head. I ended up getting really, really sick during the 83 freeze. But I remember going down to Stingray and seeing a sheet of ice like 3/4 of a mile off the shoreline out in the bay.
Oh my
A
gosh.
sheet of ice all the way out. That was wild. And like 3 days later, this would be somewhere around the 1st, I don't know, of January, maybe late December. It was right after Christmas. Water was real pretty. I mean, it was clear. The tide wasn't running hard. and you could see down 5 foot. And I'll never forget seeing all those trout and redfish.
It's on the bottom.
Just one after another, everywhere, laying on the bottom.
And that's that's probably right before they got all gassy and smelly and came up to the surface.
They were still on the bottom, and I think it takes them a while. But I do remember seeing there were mounds of fish up on the shoreline like 10 days later. You know, when the wind starts blowing, it starts moving them up. And then I think they came up is what it was. You know, and it was just, they would be 1.5 feet, 2 foot thick right there where it was mounting up on the shoreline, all the way down it. I didn't spend a lot of time, which I really wish I would have. I was duck hunting and out there looking. There was 10-pound trout, you know, without a doubt. But I'd heard. I think somebody found one over 12 in West Bay at the time, you know. But it was a devastating freeze.
Yeah, Shannon called it the freeze of biblical proportions.
It was. It was. Yeah, like it caught 5 fish over 30 inches that year before, and I hadn't caught but 4 since then in 40 years.
Really?
That are over 30 inches.
But I mean, but at least over the years, the size did increase a little bit. Like you were seeing fish in 28s, 29s, maybe 27s.
Oh, great stringers of fish. We could catch a lot of 3 to 6 pound, 3 to 7 pound. We were catching 15 or 20 fish over 7 pounds. You know, in a year. 8-pounders are rare. You know, without a doubt. Catch 2 or 3 8-pounders maybe. That's just Galveston Bay now. They're sitting down south, so this is Galveston. Some of the guys sitting up there at rollover would catch more than that, more bigger fish. And a lot of times I'm not targeting fish, big fish. I'm fishing. I'm taking people fishing. So we're not targeting big fish, especially up here in Galveston. But at days we'll catch good stringers of fish, especially in the winter, you know, fall, winter, and spring. Parks and Wildlife has seen a decline in the big fishery up and down the whole coast. And in 2004, they had the Sea Trout Committee, and I was on that.
That was my next point. Go ahead. Hit me with that one.
The Sea Trout Committee was in 2004. There was like 2,000 entries or so, or 1,800, I think is what it was now, thinking about it. And only like 25 people were able to be on it. And I was just so fortunate because it was a study of the speckled trout. They had all the information at the Perry Bass Institute. And I went there. I went to Corpus. I went to Austin. I went to the one here in, it's not Galveston. It's in Lake City. Not Lake City. Anyway, that office there. I went to Lake Jackson, the Sea Center there. We had 6-hour meetings, and we studied their fishery. We studied their process. We studied all their paperwork, all their stuff in their catches and their bycatches, and it was just it was a whole lot of great information that I didn't know that they taught me. We learned about the spawn phase. They started seeing a decline in the big fish in like 97, 98. They started seeing their catches of the bigger fish a decline. And their reasoning was really was pressure. Was pressure. And I think a lot of it was from croaker soaking. You know, we talked about it, but it's such a big business for bait camps that, you know, they haven't done anything about it. Basically, a lot of talk about it. Every year there's a lot of talk about it. But back then, it was even, they didn't want to hurt the bait camps. And it was a big fishery to take croakers off the, you know, the market, the commercial market, so to speak. They felt like that, and what come out of that Sea Trout Committee was retaining or not having or eliminating the guide's limit is what they did. So, and one fish over 25. Hal Osborne was the guy's name. He said, we want to just tweak it and see if that will help. So in 05 or 06, whatever it was, they went to a one fish over 25, and then the guides couldn't keep their limit because there was a lot of talk about guides down south going out twice a day and catching double limits.
It's not talk, it's fact, it's true.
Well, that's what I mean. It is a fact.
Yes.
Yeah, but that was talk at the Sea Trout Committee.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so they wanted to eliminate the guides' catch. So, but if they wanted to run double trips, they could. But the guide can't keep his fish. You know, I don't know. Now, I'm a hardware guy all the way. I haven't used them. Ever since I started fishing tournaments, I don't even use bait. It's been 30 years since I've used any bait. I don't even have a live well on board.
I don't have one either.
Yeah, good.
No, I'm kidding. I'm just playing. Well, I want to go into a little bit of tournament stuff because I think that stuff is very, very interesting. But before that, I was curious, when you were at these meetings, was there any like data or any information stuff that maybe you hadn't thought of, things that kind of, you know, maybe affected the way you started fishing after that, or made you look at the fishery a different way, things that kind of stuck out to you from stuff that you were learning, again, in these meetings?
It was a pressure. You know, what they told me, the pressure from people was really, they thought that was the big decline of the big fish population because there's so many people fishing now. And they wanted to try to, and what it is, it's a 3 to 5 pound fish. It's a guys, and so much of I remember several of the guys were talking about, well, you know, that's guys going out using shrimp are not normally catching that size or quality of fish. They're catching a smaller quality of fish. So it's your croaker fishermen that are catching the 3 to 6 pound, 3 to 7 pound, and the bigger fish. And I felt like that the biomass of those 4 and 5, 6 pounders is they wanted to cut down, but they're not cutting it down because croaker soaking it's a, you know, a viable way of catching bigger fish.
Oh, not to mention just the amount of like fish or like the biomass of like spawning size trout or smaller trout that are also getting taken up by these nets and end up dying anyways. That's one of the issues that I remember. I spoke to Mark Fisher over at TPWD, and he was telling me that like there was like a 4-to-1 ratio of, for every one croaker, there was 4 other species that were being killed in these nets. And it was like, well, it makes sense why the fishery was declining, or it maybe still is. I mean, technically, definitely still is. Aside from these new regulations, which I think are a very good thing to have done. But I would like to kind of pivot to how you started into the tournament stuff. Some of the tournament stories you have, like the one you told me earlier. I kind of want to save it to the end of that part, end of this segment, though.
Let me back up just one second. There's one thing I want to address, and a lot of people don't really know. And I think it was like 2010, 2009, 2011, we had the drought. We had like 2 years of drought.
I remember that, yeah.
Okay. So the fishery, so a trout, when they spawn like every 2 to 2.5 weeks or so. So they have a continual spawn, but they don't take care of their eggs. So if you remember back then, they went to a 3-fish limit down south, but we could retain 5 up here north of the of East Matagorda. So, and the reason is the runoff that you have keeps your bait, the salinity keeps your bait at a lower salinity than it does down south. So say in Baffin, say in places, the salinity really climbs up 40, 50 parts. Okay.
PBT, yeah.
Yeah, it's even higher. So if you have a drought, what happens is when the eggs of a trout hatch, like after 40 hours, and they hatch, the larva cannot sustain a high saline environment, so it kills them.
Yeah, hypotonic solution, yeah, it makes total sense.
It kills them. It kills them all. So they don't have a hatch. So they went that way for like 3 years. At the very, very back end of Rivera, or maybe in there down south where there's a little bit of runoff coming out of the Rio Grande. Some of those places, that's the only place where the salinity might be a little lower, where they might have some survivable fish. So you don't have any new fish being born that live because the salinity is so high, and it kills them. It kills the larva. 38 was the number that they came out with. 38 parts, was it?
Parts per million.
Yeah, parts per
ppm,
million.
yeah.
And so if it's higher than that, it's going to kill the larva. And a lot of times in Galveston, we're in 12 to maybe 10 to 20 parts. So in the Gulf right here, Galveston, a lot of times it's like 28 to 30. So when you get out now, it jumps up. So, but in the bay, because of the Trinity River and the San Jacinto River and the bayous also, we never, ever have a salinity that's that high. So we always have a good spawn. And that was the reason that they kept the limits 5 up here, and they went to a 3 fish limit down south.
That's interesting. One of the things that before we get into the tournament stuff, one of the things that I'd mentioned to you earlier that I was I've always been a little, not confused about, but kind of like perplexed by is after the 2021 freeze, we had those regulations go across the entire state of Texas. Or sorry, before we input the sunset clause, you had a bunch of guys on the up here on the northern coast saying, "Oh, the fishery's fine. It's been the same, whatever." What genuinely had upset me about that was the fishery was not the same. And in fact, some of these guys were actually going out of their way to change their tactics, change everything else, fishing bait in deep water, not throwing plastics, whatever, just to maintain the aura of, I'm still one of the best trout guides. And that was one of the things that kind of irked me a little bit. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of egos, no doubt, in this business. Well, I don't think we were really... And I don't think we were hurt so much from the freezes up here. There were some dead fish that were found in West Bay and some of the shallow coves and some of the places, but we didn't have the numbers. Alan Hall and I, we made a loop out through the bay, and we went up in Sunol. We went to all the ditches. We went to the very back to the mouth of rollover, and we did see some small fish. We saw bait and we saw small fish, but only in the lakes. And we did not see anything out on the bay that was dead in East Bay. And they did over in West Bay. I think, that's the only time that what I saw, that's what I'm going by. The freshwater runoffs is what's killed Galveston Bay. And the reason is we've had an enormous amount of runoff, freshwater runoffs. Hurricane Harvey was one that Lake Livingston was up to about I don't know, 115,000 cubic feet a second. And then tropical storm Imelda 4 years ago. That's when you could run a boat down I-10. Honestly, to Beaumont, from Winnie to Beaumont, it was 6 foot of water.
Jesus Christ.
And took all that water, went in the bay, it just flushed it all the way out. And then last year, we had the largest freshwater runoff out of Lake Livingston. They got up to, I think, 124,000 or whatever it was, and sustained for a while. It was water running over Highway 90 at the Liberty Bridge, and it flushed Galveston Bay east of the Texas City Dike. And we had Hurricane Beryl, 15, 18 inches of rain. And then 3 weeks later, we had 15 inches, 18 inches, like just right after that. And it flushed our bay. So what happens when you have no salt? Those fish run.
Hypotonic solution. They have to leave, yeah.
They leave. So Galveston, it's rebounding. We need a good dry year. We don't have to have a drought, but we needed, we don't need any more big floods. It's Lake Livingston right now is discharging 19,500, and that's not a big, it's going to come up, it's going to go down. It did that about a month ago. It came up to about around that, and then it went down. I think it went a little over 20, but I'm fishing East Shoreline of Trinity right now. I'm fishing East Bay and Trinity. In fact, I'm going to fish Trinity tomorrow, because it's good and salty on that East Shoreline. And I fished Trinity all last year. Boy, it was good. It was, in fact, I fished up in the bayous. It was real good in the bayous until we got a freshwater runoff. But I was launching right here at Hugo, and half the time I wouldn't even go out in the bay. I was just fishing the bayous on the north end because it was salty. In fact, I went underneath the I-10 bridge a few times, catching trout underneath the I-10 bridge. Pretty wild. Yeah.
Well, let's pivot towards the beginning of you as a tournament angler and kind of then move towards some of your successes, because I would love to end with the newspaper stuff that we just talked about for this segment.
Okay. All right. Well, I did fish a lot of tournaments, and I'll start with the Trout Masters. I guess it was 98. I'll start with that one. And I couldn't get nobody to go. I was by myself. So I remember a front come in, that first tournament I fished. I couldn't even get into bows. And I had my big Mako then, and wasn't a shallow drafted boat. I went to the back. This is in March. I think it was March, early March, middle of March, whatever. So I'm running down the North Shoreline. I just left the refuge. I made a long wade there. Nothing, no bait, no nothing. Anyway, I was like, golly, it's almost 10 o'clock, and I hadn't caught a fish first day. So I thought, I'm going to go down to the pier. It's a little reef down there called Buckshot, and get out. I pulled in up there. There was a couple slicks popped off that were drifting out. I said, look at that. Huh. Got up there. Make a long story short, I caught 9 and never made another cat. I just left them. That's what I did. I thought I got to come back tomorrow and do this. So I caught 9. They were all 3 to 6 pounders, and I kept 3 fish. They were like 16 pounds. So 3 trout. Nothing big, just good ones. Solid. And anyway, next day I caught about the same. They were a little bit smaller, but I caught about 20. And anyway, I remember Dennis Johan come up, and I think he had Bruce Ball with him. He was over in Calcasieu now, and I'm pretty sure it was Bruce and another guy. Anyway, I let them come up. I didn't care if they want to fish with me or not. I've always been where people want to come up. If you do it right, come fish with me. I don't care. There's a couple of guys, they hate people to come around them, but I'm not that guy. I've fished by so many people, and I don't mind it. So as long as you do right. Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, I won that tournament. Wasn't even close. I just blew the field away. Had 32.29 6 fish. And that was the first Trout Masters I fished. So we had another one in the fall. And I remember I wasn't on any big fish. I think it was in September. And I thought, man, the birds are working the upper end. And I started fishing the upper end. And I thought, man, I got no big fish this tournament. So I had caught some good ones out there. And I went to Bull Hill. And I thought, I'm going to go out here and go check it out. It's a couple of days in advance. And got out, made a wade during the day. But anyway, I caught a couple 5-pounders. I went, look at here. Okay. And we're going to start here. Well, Saturday, weather was good. It was pretty. I had a guy, John Grimion, fishing with me. And it was a individual tournament, but it was amateurs and then the guides. So you had 2 categories. So one of us, or divisions. You fish the guides division or the amateur division. So John, he's a amateur. And so I caught, I don't know, 6 or 7, something like that, I guess. Nothing big, but good ones. I had I want to think I had around 14, just under 15 pound, under a 5-pound average, but I know it was a 4 something, heavy 4, I think. And we had a tropical storm form in the Gulf, and we started getting wind off of it. It came ashore somewhere down south as a minimal storm, I don't know. And I thought, wow, because the next day, Sunday, it's blowing 20 that morning. And I'm going to go out and fish an open reef. And John's like, what are we going to do? And I said, man, we got to go check it out. And he's like, really? We're going to go out there? And I said, I don't know what else to do. I said, we can probably go catch some 1.5-pounders, 2-pounders, but I'm on nothing. It's got hot. That's right. It was early in the fall, and it got hot. So anyway, we bail out there. It's rough, but the tide had come up, and I remember the tides being weak. So being weak, it doesn't stir the water as bad. So we got lucky. Anyway, I anchored up. We go to get out, and we just caught the outside. We're catching the outside bands, and I remember the lightning and the rain. And we got back in the boat and laid down because it lightened around us, lightning. Now we're sitting in a boat, and we hadn't been there long, and I remember it went past us, and we got back out, and it's nasty. It's nasty. It's blowing 20 plus. Yeah. And I ended up catching 4. We stayed out there all day long, and I remember losing a big one pretty quick. We were throwing mirror lures back then, 51 mirror lures, but I lost a good one. Came up, he broke me off. I was just like, oh my gosh, because I didn't have another bite for like an hour or 2, and I caught one. And then I caught another one. And I didn't catch any big fish that day, but I remember catching 4. And I think I had, like 13 pounds or something like that, 3 fish. John caught 2. He caught one almost 8. It was a 7 7.75, somewhere in that neighborhood. Didn't weigh 8, but it was a heavy 7, and he only weighed in 2 fish. And I remember in that tournament of over 100 guys fishing, Charlie Paradosky got second in the guides division, and I got first. I won it again.
By how many? How much weight?
Well, let me just say,
Okay.
he and I were the only people that second day to weigh in 3 fish.
Really?
It was that bad. Yeah, it was bad because we went in. It was blowing 25 to 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
It was something else. And I mean, I think I had like 13 pounds.
Yeah.
Something, or 12, maybe 12, 13 that second day. First day I had, I think, right at 14. So.
When did you get involved with the redfish stuff? Or like how much time passes?
Yeah.
My question.
Doc and I started fishing the cup in 03, and we paid our dues. And then in 04, I placed in Florida in one of the tournaments. I placed here. I didn't do good. I barely placed in my home water, but I placed in Venice. I did well there, and we made the Classic. And it's the top 25. I also placed 5th. I placed 5th, but I think that was the following year in a tournament. I'll talk about that. Let me go back to where I was. Okay, the Classic was great because it actually goes into one of my best trout masters ever. So there were back-to-back tournaments. It was in 04. It was in the fall, and we kind of backdoored the Redfish Cup. First day, we're just in the middle of the pack, 13th place out of 25 teams. And then the next day was a tougher day for everybody, but it was a banner day for us. So we jumped from 13th to 3rd place. So the third day is a 5-day, it's a 3-day fish off. So only take the 5 best teams. That's it. So they've got a cameraman on board on each boat. Well, there was a little offshoot from where we were fishing it. We haven't been in yet. And I said, Doc, let's go try that little hook right over there. And we caught 2 8-pounders. And I'm measuring them, and they're on the line. Both of those fish. And when we came back and measured them, one guy, he's like, oh man, he said, I don't know. And this guy, the weighmaster, and he turned the fish over and weighed him, and he goes, hey, he's legal. He's right on the money, man. And he said, you guys are lucky. He can't be even
an eighth of an inch bigger, yeah.
Oh no, he can't be. Yeah. A hair bigger.
Yeah.
And we won the Alberto Redfish Cup, 150,000, and so the Trout Masters was the next weekend out of Calcasieu. Practicing in the Alberto, you can't get out of the boat, and we were in West Cove, and I caught a couple 7-pounders practicing for the Redfish Cup. So I went looking. I spent some time in there looking. And we had a front, because it was in October. We had a front hit, and it was a north wind. It was bad weather that Friday. I didn't even go practice last day. The last day to practice. Ralph Frazier. I'll never forget Ralph coming up to me going, man, you ain't going fishing? I go, no, not today. He goes, there's tournaments tomorrow. And I go, I know. He just looked at me and goes, you got them. You got them down, don't you? And I said, I feel good about myself. I do. I told him that. And he's like, golly. And so anyway, the first day of and Robert Shearer was running that tournament. He had it where it was a 5 fish. It was a team tournament, and it was 5 fish. And you could weigh 3 fish over 25, but you had to weigh 2 fish under 25. Because in Louisiana, the limits is 3 fish over 25. That's all you can catch. So if one of you caught him, he couldn't weigh. That was the law. So anyway, that's the way it was. It was structured that way. So Doc and I were talking, what we're going to do, we just have to wait and see how luck plays out. Well, the first day, we got on a good stringer of fish, 5-pounders. So 4.5 5-pounders. I think we weighed in one that was like 7 3/4, and we had 2 fish just under 25. So we had about 16 pounds. So 3 fish, and we're leading it. There's some guys right behind us, not far behind us, so a lot of people just caught fish because it was blowing out of the north. Well, the next day it was still blowing out of the north, but it was clear. Because I remember it was chilly that Saturday, but the wind really backed down. But I told Doc, I said, we went back where we were and didn't do any good. Man, we just caught a couple of 3-pounders. I said, hey, you can do nothing with this. And I said, let's go over and get in behind Rabbit Island and let's get on that shell that runs over there on that west side. And it's like, man, they ain't going to be fishable. Wind's blowing straight into it. I said, let's get over there. I said, we're going to have some protection from the island right there. And we did. If you get in past that corner there, you go down about 250 yards or so. That's where that shell starts. Well, we got over there. Water's dirty up on the bank. It's close. Well, you get out about maybe 30 yards, 25 yards, it turns to kind of a murky green. Fishable. Not clear, but it's fishable. So anyway, we bail out. I said, let's get out, wait it. Let's spend some time. Holy smoke, the big ones are there. I mean, it was something I still regret not staying, but we were catching 4.5 to 8.5 pound fish. I caught a 29 and a half. I caught another 29. Doc's got a 29. We caught 2 or 3 that were in that 28 range, 2 or 3 27s, 26 27s. We didn't stay with it. It's like I told Doc, we only need 2 fish. You catch one, I catch one. Both of our fish were 8-pounders. I think his was just a tad under. Mine was a little over. And I had a 29. I told Doc, I said, the one I released was bigger than this one. And I said, it's an 8-pounder, and it was about 8 1/4. You know? So it's like, golly, I got a couple others, that were 28 and a half, that were 7.5, 7 3/4.
Yeah.
And we blew the field away. Just blew the field away. If we had not had to weigh 2 fish under 25, we would have had a stringer of 5 fish, almost 40 pounds.
Jesus. Wow.
Yeah, would have. If we could have not had to weigh in 2 5-pounders.
Yeah, under 25.
Yeah. So, and I'll never forget, and I'll tell you, this was pretty cool, getting some recognition from other guides. So we left at 10 o'clock, went to the weigh-in. We sat at the weigh-in for 3.5, 4 hours. We had to. And they hadn't even opened up the weigh-in yet. And I told Doc, I said, we should have stayed on those big fish. We could have caught, I'm sure we'd have caught something, enormous.
Yeah.
A lifetime fish. But we left them and just, we idled back. I mean, on a plane. But I'll never forget going in front of Jay Watkins and his son. And he come right up to me at the tournament. And as soon as they got in, he's like, man, you got them fish, didn't you? And it's funny. Jay's real funny. And I don't talk to him much, but he did. He's just like, I knew you did. It's 10 o'clock. You're just idling by, going home. It was kind of funny. And then James Plott called me up. I was on the way home, I believe, almost home. And he just called me. He said, man, that was big time. Gave me some props on that. And I still remember that conversation. It was pretty cool. So,
is there any other tournament accolades that you want to talk about or bring up?
Well, those first 2 that I won, I went down to Rockport. I fished one in Rockport, and it was pretty cool. I got on some fish on the second chain of islands, and in between Ayers and San Carlos, that's Mesquite Bay, on those areas right there. The first day we caught them pretty good, and then the wind started pumping, and it was a grind. In fact, my partner, Doc, he only caught 1 fish the second day, and I grinded out, and I stayed with it, throwing corkies up in that shallow water, up on those reefs. And that second day I was over in, I believe in between San Carlos and Mesquite Bay, and that reefs that go, everybody's passing me up, but that's where I was. I didn't catch nothing big, but they were just good ones, 3 to 5s, 2.5 to 5 pounders. And I was leading it the first day, but and in fact, Jay Watkins and Jay Ray fishing with him, I think it was Jay Ray, caught one almost 8. And they inched me out. I got second place, but that was cool because it wasn't in my home water. I was fishing down somewhere where I don't guide, and but to cut, to end up second place there was pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah. It was.
Speaking of lifetime fish, you brought up in the previous story, I wanted to talk about that fish that's broken on the table over there.
Yeah. Okay. That That evening, it was in '83 before the freeze. It was right after November. I mean, right after Thanksgiving. I believe it was that Sunday. I don't remember. Maybe Monday. Chuck and Robert Tucker were with me, and so we went to Black's. Went in the back, and we waited 300 yards. The sun's going down, and they pulled in, and we caught like 15, 18 fish. I think we only had 2 fish under 5 pounds. They were just all like 5, 6 pounders. And I know Robert caught one that was like 28 and a half that weighed a little over 8. And then that fish there is 31 and a third. It's the largest fish I ever caught, trout. There, weighed 9 and a half, 31 and a third.
Big fish.
Yeah, big fish. But it was at dark.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's when they came in. It was sundown before we caught a fish.
Really?
And then it was just boom, boom, boom. Yeah.
So you spent a lot of time fishing like at night when with no sun, doing the nocturnal stuff?
No, that went into the night.
Okay.
It's where it's dark because the refuge was one of my favorite places to fish in the evening when there's nobody there. There might be a dozen or a half a dozen boats fishing it in the morning, but in the evening, late, and in the wintertime, man, they will pull in there. I have had some stringers. I haven't ever broke 9 pounds there, but I've had some 8 pounders off the refuge, and stringers of 3 to 6 pound fish, you know, off the Anahuac Water. And I'll be the only boat there.
Yeah.
A lot of times in the winter, I'll fish evenings. So what I do, and when I meet guys, is I'll go up in the bayous. I like to fish up in Sunol, fished it for years. Can always catch them up there at times, you know, but we'll spend time. Then I may go to Black's. And if that refuge is fishable, I'll be on that refuge at dark. Now that I think that, I had Adam O, a guy, just kind of plopped in. He caught a 29 and a half on a refuge with me. And I think that was January. Mm-hmm. There ain't nobody out fishing. Well, one there, and that was at dark.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that fish being your biggest like success or whatever, what was your biggest fish you've lost? The one of your biggest heartbreak?
Oh, everybody's going to tell you it's a state record. But no, I don't know. You know, the big one that in that bad weather day when that storm was coming in, that was one because I was fishing a tournament that I lost that fish when he broke me off because he took a lot of line. I hit him, stuck him, I knew it. And when he came up to shake, he broke me. Huh. And but it wasn't a monster. I was probably it was like a 7 pounder.
Yeah.
You know, it was a good one, without a doubt.
I would have done it.
Yeah, that may have been an 8 pounder. I've caught a 9 pounder out there. Caught a couple of 9s. Had a guy with me catch a 9 out there, right at 9. So,
what was one of the most unique things that you saw that maybe people will never ever be able to see?
Oh, just the life of a hunting fishing guide.
That's why I'm
going
asking.
day after day after day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't, not one thing sticks out. I don't have one thing that sticks out.
What's one thing that you see out whenever you're out with clients or by yourself, with friends, family, etc., that you find yourself being more appreciative of, either like wildlife, fauna?
Oh, the sunrise. You see the sunrise come up daily, being on it. You appreciate it now. I'm in my 60s, and I don't want that grind of fishing tournaments. I don't have to be the best anymore, and I felt like I was right there with them, no doubt, I don't have nothing to prove anymore. I've done it.
Yeah.
I've done it all. So, in hunting, what I'm doing now, I'm not fishing every day, and I started doing some real estate and doing all with that and with my hunting. And I wish now I'd started this 10 years ago. Because I had a heat stroke. I was borderline heat stroke last year. And I'm probably not going to guide in the heat of the summer very much.
Yeah.
I'll fish the beach a lot. When the beach is pretty, I'm on it.
I'll
be fishing the beach. I can get off and get in my truck, plus when you're wading, you don't get hot.
Yeah.
Like being in a boat. But that grind of guiding every day, I'm done with that. I fished 4 days last week, guided 4 trips last week, and that's all I want. So I'm taking 2 days off. I got a trip in the morning and then Wednesday. And then I I may fish Thursday. I don't know. I may fish with the friends. I may fish on my own Thursday, and I may not. I don't know. I like being able to do what I want to do and not have to make a living fishing anymore.
Of course.
I don't want to make a living fishing. So
do you find that you enjoy it more now that you're taking more time off the water in quotations?
You know, I still miss it.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah, I still miss it. I have that because I've done it for so long, and I know where, you know, I'll go get them.
Yeah.
Go catch them. You know, whether I'm guided or not, that don't make a bit of difference. But I know,
of course.
You know, miss that day on the water. But I've learned to pace myself and not worry about it.
Gotcha.
It's no big deal. It'll come into my mind, and I'm just like, I just blow it off.
In terms of clients, are there any clients that you've met over the years that became like regular friends, stuff like that you like
John
cherish?
Grimion's one. Yeah, John and I have been fishing together for 30-something years. Dr. Lamont, Doc was he just moved out of Tiki. We saw each other at Dave Quidon's birthday party last summer, and sit beside him. He would just bring back old memories like that. It's a good, you know, Quidon and I he started guiding for me from my dad. Kind of that's where he got his start. And Dave and I spent a lot of time together. It was good. Robert passed away with cancer, I think 2 years ago or last year. Maybe it was last year. And Chuck Lewandowski was another good fisherman who, he didn't guide, but he was a good fisherman. Sonny Norrell was a guide, guided for me. So Arliss was another one. So anyway, you know, we all get older.
Yeah. Wow. So. One of the things that was a heavy backtrack is be hard to segue. But I forgot to ask this. When you were beginning your guiding, that first decade of guiding, were you one of the people who had to deal a lot with gill nets and people putting out those long lines and stuff like that?
I saw some, but not a lot. I'll tell you where we saw them, and it was still legal in the 80s. I mean, in the 70s. And that was in a Bolivar pocket. They used to call it Meskin Beach because it's that they lived there and they could do it legally. And it was somewhere around 80, 81 that they moved them out of the pocket, maybe 82. They took the fish off the commercial market. And let me tell you, I've sold many a speckled trout in my days. Yeah, I've got like 50 cents a pound for them, filleted. I mean, that ain't much, but you know what? There wasn't a limit on them.
At the time, the mindset was so much more different. So there's nothing to be like,
it was illegal to do it.
Yeah.
Gas was 70, 80 cents a gallon, you know, so I could go out and go catch a bunch of fish. I hardly ever counted my fish. I filled the cooler up and we come home. If they're biting, they're still biting, whatever.
When did you find yourself changing your mindset from, we'll keep everything we catch to, let's let this one go?
The limits went to 20.
Okay.
In like 81 and in 83, they went to 10 after that freeze. They went to a 10 fish, and then they went to 15 inches, from 14 to 15. I think that was later, though. They were still at 14, but they also decreased the redfish to 5. So I'm good with a 3-fish limit.
No, you and me both.
I am. I'm good with it. The only thing I would tweak, I would probably go to a 25-inch. You know, but leave it at 3. And if you wanted to keep, rather than from now to that, you know, it's only a 5-pound fish.
It's like 17 to 25 is what you're saying, or just fish over 25?
No, I would go to the 3-fish to 25.
Okay, so 17 to 25.
Yeah,
is that what the limit is?
15.
Yeah, 15 right now.
Yeah.
15 to 25.
Yeah, 15 to 25. Yeah. But then again, another thing is, I think of the beachfront. If you're fishing on the beachfront, I think you could keep 5 of any size. And the reason is those fish are not being hit hard. You only have a certain amount of days that you can go out there. You cannot go out there in a boat. If you're in a boat, your limit's 3 because you can't prove that's where you went when you come to the dock. But if you're in your truck and you're driving up and down the beach and you get that chance to catch 5 fish on the beachfront, why can't you keep them? The beachfront never has a freeze that hurts it. It never has a fresh water.
Swim to deep water. Yeah, they just move over a couple hundred yards.
The beachfront is not being hurt like the bays are. So why can't you keep 5 fish on the beachfront? You
don't think those same fish, like that biomass of fish, will eventually fluctuate in and out the actual bay to the Gulf?
Yes. Sure.
But not back out?
No, the only time they leave the bay is if there's a large freshwater runoff. Or if you have a freeze, then you'll have them go to deep water, and some of those fish will hang at jetties. There's people who would disagree with me that think that there's a migration, but there's not a migration. Fish come in, but they're going to stay. They go to the head of the bay. They want to be up in the bayous. They go up to Upper Galveston. They go up to Upper East Bay. They go in the back of West Bay. They go up upper end of the bays during the wintertime, during the fall. And they're not going to come out unless they get run out, pushed out, not to the Gulf. They come out of those areas along the shorelines, and then they disperse out in the bay in deep water during the summer. But they don't leave the bay. They come into the bay. You get more fish that replenishes the bay from out in the Gulf. But they're not going back out. There's not a migration that goes out.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with you either.
Parks and Wildlife.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all.
I don't disagree with what Parks and Wildlife, what they say. I do a little bit on what they do.
And what we talked about 7 or 15 and 25, right? That was one thing.
And I'm not real. I'm not going to sit back and say, hey, this is wrong, because I don't think it is, because they know a lot better than me.
I think it's one of the best things we've seen for the fish in a long time.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think the beachfront is hurting at all. And I think if you just left it at 5 fish there, they would be fine.
What an interesting take.
Yeah. On it. And people don't think about that. But if you're in a boat, your limit should be 3, because you can't prove that you didn't go to the jetties or you went somewhere else, or you say, well, I went to the beachfront. No. If you're in your truck, you're in your vehicle, and you're fishing the beachfront, you didn't go in the bay. Almost anywhere you go, you're going to have a boat. So if you're fishing the beachfront, I think you could catch 5 fish. Interesting.
I like that, being more variable, more what's the word I'm looking for? Malleable with the rules. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. When we should quick backtrack, I was thinking about this question. When we're talking about tournament stuff, you said at the pinnacle of your tournament results, you felt like you were one of the best. Who were, quote unquote, the top guys, the people that you wanted to beat?
Oh, I didn't have anybody that I had to beat, because I beat them all. I did. I did.
But for example,
I won 4 Trout Masters. I won Redfish Cup. I ran Lady Anglers Tournament. I won it a couple times. CCA tournaments in my home waters. I just, I was there.
But there was no one that you were like, oh, I gotta make sure I do good and da-da-da. Like
You're fishing against everybody. It's all, I didn't have one guy that I needed to beat. No.
Not even in the Classic? Because you're, I'm saying, like, I know there's a little bit of competition, and maybe a little bit of ego. It's like, you kind of, like, I know that I would be like, oh, these are the names to beat. But then again, different time, different mindset, different people.
Honestly, and I may be a little bit cocky on this, but I felt like I was the best. I was the one to beat.
Wow. So. Wow. From Jim West to Jim Best.
Well, there's a lot of good fishermen out there, and everybody is the best on certain days.
For sure. Yeah.
No doubt.
By any chance, was there ever anyone that you took under your wing? Any mentorship type deal? Anyone that you taught, like, kind of your ways?
Maybe duck hunting a little bit, but not so much fishing. I had several guides that I helped, that when they were guiding with me, I would help them because I wanted them to help the customer. I think that's one thing I've always been good with, is good with customers. I don't grab my rod. I don't move them out of the way. I know I hear stories about them catching all the fish, and I see that a lot in the summertime. There's several guys, I'm not going to mention their names, and they're well known. They're good fishermen, but it's almost like they're going to catch all the fish. They want to fish. They got their rod in their hand. I'll sit back on a trolling motor now. I just do that all the time. And I think my dad really drilled that in my head about you're the guide. You're not the one catching the fish. You're the guide. You're not the one to shoot the ducks. I leave my gun at home half of my duck hunts. I don't take a gun. Going back up North Texas this year on another goose hunt, and I told the guys, I'll just come cook. I just want to be on the trip. I don't have to shoot. I've shot more birds than anybody, just about.
Yeah.
I've caught more fish than just about anybody. That's the way I feel. Now, that I haven't, I know I haven't, but I feel that way.
For sure.
Because I don't have nothing to prove.
It's a good way to look at it, though. I like that way to look. I mean, you're being honest. Like
you're being the guide, and the guide is to put your people on fish, and it's for them to catch them.
Yeah.
Not you.
What was your best day duck hunting?
Oh Lord! Back in the 80s, back in the 70s. Your best day, you got a limit, so you can't shoot more. It's not a catch and release like a fish. I remember some days going to Arkansas. We were shooting nothing but mallards. Some early 80s, mid 80s. I went to Arkansas some. It was incredible just to see all the mallards, and they do that now in Kansas. And back when the point system in the 70s, you could shoot 10 birds. I remember a lot of days shooting 50 ducks, 50 ducks with groups, Pintail used to be so plentiful. They used to be 10 points, killing 25, 30, 35 pintail and a few teal, a few gadwall with them, just killing a pile of pintail. And then the population just went through it just lost, and it's come to be a one bird now. So,
what did you think about the released ducks program?
I've never done it. I don't intend on doing it. That's not something that's it's just like releasing quail or pheasant or anything.
Well, I'm sorry, let me rephrase the question. I asked more so not for the ethics, but for the results. Because I'd spoken to Rob Sawyer a little bit, and Rob Sawyer is gung-ho about waterfowl, just like you. And he was telling me about the released ducks program and how they found that the holdover ducks started messing with the DNA of natural ducks. So now we really don't have any true wild ducks, essentially. So I was wondering to get your take on that side of it, not so much the ethics, because everyone knows it's like
I honestly don't believe that. I think a mallard, because most of those are getting mallards and the Canadas is what most people raise. They're not raising teal or gadwall, widgeon, or some of your divers. There may be a few wood ducks, but I don't think you can buy them. They release them. I mean, not release them, but they raise them in places because they put wood duck huts up, little, for them to nest in. The mallards are mostly what's being released. And I think that mallard, he's like a turkey. He'll screw anything.
Yeah.
So, possibly, but I don't think it's a big deal on a duck population.
So your quarrel is more so on the ethics side of it.
I think that is a business, and if people want to do it, that's fine. I have no interest in doing it. I have no interest of shooting them. Pin raised birds.
Gotcha.
I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah, it kind of takes away, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but it kind of takes away the sportsman feel to it, right?
I did it when my dad used to run quail dogs, and he guided some quail hunts, and we would get some pen-raised quail and shoot a few, and it was mainly to train the dogs. And I was kind of okay with it, but it's so easy. It's just not even a hunt. I'm a good shot. I mean, I can shoot. I actually used to shoot a little bit of competition too.
Really?
So, a little bit. I can shoot. Oh, yeah. The competition was not so much in at the skeet range and shooting against most of that. Most of the competition shooting was, I shot some pigeon shoots, and I shot there at where we were just betting money.
Yeah.
And another guy that was good was Gene Ballard. He was a good shot. Gene and I, we shot against each other all the time and everybody else, and it seemed like it always boiled down to me.
Y'all too.
We did. We took everybody's money. So.
Oh, that's funny. Well, we are at an hour and 18 minutes. So the last thing, I always like to end these with two things. But before I do that, is there anything else that you want to go over? Any topics that I may have missed? Something like that?
Oh, I can't think of any of them, really.
We've covered a lot. A lot.
We did.
I'm glad that we've gotten this far, especially because last week I was supposed to come and then I missed out. It was my fault reason why we weren't able to do this last week. But the way I like to end these is, first question is looking back on everything that you've done from the very, very beginning, the 40 years, 45 years of guiding that you've done, as well as the duck stuff and all the other things. Is there anything you wish you would have done differently?
Yeah. the marsh was buyable. We could have bought some of that marsh that the feds came in and made refuges out of.
Really?
And at a really cheap price. My dad, and it wasn't me, and I never even really thought about what's going on, what's happening, but he didn't. He had a belly full of it. And so he bought a 1,600-acre ranch out in North Texas, West Texas. And he wanted to go quail hunting and deer hunting. So he's like, I'm done with it. I don't want to hunt no more. I don't want to duck hunt no more. I'm tired of this. I'm going to go take my dogs and I'm going to go quail hunt for the rest of my life.
So you could have been owning a really big piece of Texas marsh.
Yeah, around High Island. Yeah. Yeah. I'll never forget being able, they talked about it, and he just didn't want no part of it.
Do you remember the price per square foot? How was it? Price per square foot? No, price per square acre, right? It was acre?
Yeah.
What was the price per acre?
I think, I don't know what the feds did, but there was a group of guys out of Beaumont that ended up buying it for about, and I'm thinking a little less than $1,000. I think it was around $750 an acre. And I think we could have got it at $250 an acre.
Jesus.
Yeah, or $200 an acre. Yeah, he didn't want no part of it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was for sale for a long time.
Wow. There's a plot of land on Sal Padre that's like 25 acres for $625,000. And to the naked eye, it's a genius idea. It's like, wow, 25 acres on the island. But what they don't tell you is that it's actually reserve. So
25 acres.
25 acres of just beach, just sand. So you're on Sal Padre, you go all the way north. I don't know. I haven't checked. I haven't checked if it's still available. This was like a year ago, 2 years ago. I just thought it was really funny. But yeah, once you get to where the road ends, those 25 acres forward, you can buy, but you can't build on. But you can buy.
Why would you spend that kind of money on a little piece of property?
You'd only do that if you knew that the island eventually was planning to get rid of the refuge. I would think. Especially when you see what they did for LNG, you see what they did for SpaceX. So it kind of makes sense why that would be open, but it is kind of like a saddening reality.
It's expensive. That's through the roof.
Yeah, but if you can get 25 acres on the island right now, and in the middle of the island, that would cost you, $3-4 million. Well, obviously we're talking about just where the businesses would be, the properties in and of themselves, right? But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, you gotta wonder why. And so it's kind of like, it's the idea of Sal Padre getting built through more and more kind of scares me a little bit. I don't know
if you could build on it and do something with it, but why would you spend the money if you can't?
Well, you're waiting till Texas cracks. You're waiting till the legislature says, all right, fine. You can build on the river.
That might not ever happen.
It just did last year or 2 years ago.
That kind of money spent for something to wait to see if something happens, that's mind-boggling to me that I wouldn't even if I had the money, I wouldn't spend it on that.
I mean, that's kind of what some of the oil industry does, right? They buy those large plots of lands where they eventually plan to dig and stuff, and they just hold it.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a similar kind of cohesiveness there, but I don't know. It's just kind of crazy to think about. Like,
I wouldn't think about it one cent. That's not me at all. I mean, I'm doing real estate, but I'm looking at hunting property. In fact, I just bought 80 acres up near the Red River, and I'm looking at some more property now. I got 2 pieces. I got 2 tracts for sale, and I'm gonna do a 1031 exchange when I sell them. So and I'm gonna build a home away from home probably next year.
Nice.
In Anahuac on that east side.
Really?
Yep. I just bought 2.5 acres there.
Wow.
So
okay, well, the last question that I have is more so like more so an advice, but as if you're talking to the next generation, younger kids, 14, 16, 18, that kind of want to move forward in this space as a professional, either in the guiding space, whatever. What is a piece of advice you give them? Go to
school, have a job, but fish part-time. Don't go into it as a full-time job. You'll go broke. Everything's expensive now. Everything costs. And if you're going to try to raise a family, you're going to have money problems going into it full-time. Do it. Go get you a degree. You don't have to have a 4-year degree. You don't have to have a master's. You could get an instrument rating 2-year degree, and at least you got go work for one of these oil companies, and you got income coming in. You're working 6 months there. I know 3 or 4 guides, and they're making, you got 100,000 coming in, give or take, and either side of that, and then you can go guide part time. Be a part-time guide and have that extra income coming in. And then you're doing something you enjoy. But if you're going to have a family and you're going to raise kids, have a wife and kids, you better have some income. And you're not going to do it being a fishing guide full-time.
Do you see a lot of the younger guys nowadays just jumping into it head first without thinking these things through?
Mm-mm. I didn't.
No, but I'm saying like nowadays,
Yeah.
from people that you meet now.
Maybe some, if you're smart about it. Maybe, their dads have helped them a little.
Yeah.
Here's what you need to do. You can't afford a $100,000 boat. Go buy a new boat. I mean, a used boat. Don't buy a new boat. Don't spend all that money on a 4-wheel drive truck just to haul your boat around and you never even get it off in the mud. Sure, you look good.
Yeah.
I'd never buy a new vehicle anymore. I never buy. My boat's, I just got it redone. It's 24 years old.
Huh.
Third motor on it. I drive a 2-wheel drive truck out here. I bought it 2 years old. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to buy a brand new vehicle.
Yeah.
Save your money. Use your money. Don't go blow your money just to look good.
Do you think that social media is the reason why people like to look good now and find themselves in that
I
predicament?
don't think you grow up when you're young.
Interesting.
So fast. Some people grow up. I didn't grow up so fast.
Huh.
So I don't feel like I did.
Well, we're at the hour 25. I think I cut the first minute out though. This has been awesome, Jim. I'm so glad we finally got to do this. It was your thing. I think you're the first person I texted once I got out of the Houston fishing show about trying to set this up. And I'm glad that even though we had a couple hiccups last week, I'm glad we're finally able to make it happen.
That's good. Yeah. I don't mind it. It's good.
Well, with that being said, I mean, I feel we covered everything that we wanted to cover, and all there is left to do is just get on out of here.
Well, that's it. I got to go to the beach. I got a guy coming in that's going to fish tomorrow.
You got to do your thing. I got to do my thing.
All right. Very good.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.